She's got to unmute.
Okay, I found where I was unmuted.
There you go.
So I have discovered, like other people, the Orlando wetlands, and I so much enjoy going down there. I went down there this year, and I went down there last year during the birding, what I would call the birding season. And I started following the Orlando Wetlands group. And then all of a sudden, there were all these wonderful photos by somebody called Jack Rogers. And I said, well, damn, look at these. So then I friended him and got to watch more. And then I said, we got to get him up here to talk to us, because his pictures are just outstanding. And you can see, I know so much about his background, but I do know who he is. And I'm so glad that he agreed to come talk to our club and give an outing. Thank you, Jack.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's
And,
gonna be fun.
and then when the group was down there, because we went, or we had a little outing down there, and I think one Nancy Flynn, who
Right.
is our outing chair, saw you or something in the parking lot and ran after
Right.
you. As I recall. So we are delighted that you're here now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit stop share and then let you share, and I'm going to mute myself and unmute you. How about that? Let's do that.
Everybody's muted. We can't hear a thing.
We
Oh,
can't hear
okay.
Jack.
All right. Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Yes, yes, I can hear you now.
Yes. You can hear me now? Okay. And do you see my photo of the swallowtail kite?
Yes. There should
So
be a
that,
way to make it full screen though.
yeah, I've got it full screen on mine.
Maybe it's how
If I can,
full screen for you, right?
yeah.
Wonder if
On control. Say layout here. Content only. That's presenting.
There, you did it.
Yeah, I did it. Okay, good. So that's what you don't need to see me. You just can see so you see the whole deal now. Good. So actually, I know I talked to several people about this, and one of the thoughts was that I could do a talk just saying, here's what you can see at Orlando Wetlands, and here's some tips about if you go to wetlands. And then I was reviewing all my correspondence today. It looked like the last time we had talked, I talked with someone. They said this was the talk that I was going to give. So I'm going to talk about bird and nature photography in general. I'm going to try to, and a lot of these photos are going to be from Orlando wetlands, by the way. And then we'll talk about specifically some of the tips that if you're doing beach photography, and particularly if you're going with us tomorrow, those will be useful for you. So I don't see anybody's face on my screen now, but if you have any questions, unmute and holler and let's talk.
yeah, because we have moderators, so she'll watch that.
Okay,
dashboard.
so
Yeah.
that'll be good. So that's the idea. This photo, anybody know what this is? Swallowtail kite. This was at Lake Woodruff. Um, it's a famous location because what happens is the birds are with us for the summer, and you may have seen them flying around. They've showed up now. I saw four of them flying around my neighborhood yesterday morning, but they are here and they hunt and breed and do that stuff, and then they'll be migrating out of here at the end of the summer. And when they do, they for one reason or another like to congregate at Lake Woodruff, and by the hundreds, and they're just all in the trees. And in the morning, they start waking up, they preen a little bit, and then they dip down and they take a drink of the water. They literally drink on the fly. And this is a photo of one of the guys just before he hits the water. So it's a spectacular opportunity to do some neat photography. You have to have a boat, you have to rent a boat to do it, but yeah, it's a great place to go, and that's where this came from. So anyway, and anytime you go out, and this applies to like not just bird photography, but successful photography of any sort, you want to prepare yourself. The chances that you're going to go to grab your camera and go, it's a nice day, let's go take some world-class photos and get anything great is fairly small. But if you plan ahead and think about what you're going to do, it'll put you in the right place at the right time with the right weather, the right equipment, and the stuff going on that you want to see. So I've got a few bullets here, but we'll talk about each one a little bit. So specifically, and I do this all the time. I mean, before I came down here, I was looking at the weather. What's the weather? What's the wind going to be for the beach tomorrow? So those things are all very useful. Let's just have a look. So one of the things that's really helpful was this advent of this thing they call social media, right? And so I've been on Facebook for, I think maybe something silly, like 20 years now. I don't know. When I was early on doing workshops in Florida, I went out with a group, and afterwards I told them, send me some photos. Let's see how you did. And the lady said, one of the participants, well, I'm on Facebook. Just check me out there. So I said, oh, sure, great. So that's when I discovered, well, you can't go on Facebook without joining Facebook. And that's what got me on Facebook. But then it's turned out to be this wonderful tool. At this point in my career, I've got, 5,000 Facebook friends all over the world. So anytime I want to go anywhere, it's a great tool. I just say, get on Facebook and say, hey, I'm coming to California, or I'm coming to Minnesota, or I want to go see the owls, or whatever. Who can give me some tips? Who's been out lately? Or the other thing you can do is, if you know you're going someplace and you're not sure if you have a friend, you can make a friend, because you can. I guarantee you, any place in the world now that's worth doing photography at has a Facebook page. If you want to go to Orlando Wetlands, they have two Facebook pages. If you want to go to Fort DeSoto Park, where I'm going the day after tomorrow on the West Coast, they have three pages. And you go to those pages, you just do Facebook search for your location, and you'll find a page. You'll find photos. You'll find some photos that are great, some not so great, but they all have. Anytime anything is going on there, it'll have information about oh, these babies were like Fort DeSoto, the least turns just hatched yesterday. I know that. So when I go there after tomorrow, that's one of the things I'll be looking for. You can ask people, oh boy, I love your photo of that least turn. Where somebody, in fact, somebody messaged me today and had seen photos that I took of Wilson's plovers. And they said, hey, exactly that. Great photos. I'm getting ready to go over there. Where can I find the Wilson's plovers? So I told her. So she's prepared. She knows what time to go. She knows where to go. She's well ahead of the game, as opposed to just showing up and looking for some birds to photograph. Right? She knows where to go and what to see. She's going to anticipate. I'm going to need a longer lens. I'm going to have to go to this end. I'm going to have to go in the morning when the sun's shining on the nest. All those things can put you way ahead of the game, as opposed to just walking out and hoping for a great photo. So what you're seeing here is a screenshot from a couple of years ago when the flamingos first showed up, which was amazing. I've been here in Florida forever, and the only flamingos I had seen were in the zoos, like at Gatorland. So, but I knew you could go to South Florida, but the story was, well, you'd have to get a kayak and go way out in the swamps, and it's. So I thought, well, I can hold up on the flamingos. But then they showed up. We had a hurricane. Flamingos showed up, and of course, people are finding them. They're putting them on Facebook, and so that's what I did. I got on Facebook. I found the photo. I said, love that photo. Where do you think I'm getting ready to go over there? Where might I find it? So that's what I did, uh, and that's what I got. That's the lagoon at Fort DeSoto. They were there for a while. They shipped to another side. Oops. And then they showed up at Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge, right south of here. If you've been to Merritt Island, there's never been flamingos there. And the first year they weren't there. And then they showed up, and I got a friend of mine and said, hey, let's go out. And we went out and found 19 of them out of Merritt Island. But neither one of these photos, I would have ever had a clue about if it wasn't for social media. So it's a great tool. If you're not on Facebook and you're not into the TikTok or social media or any of that stuff, it's just a powerful tool for you to learn about places to go and what time of day and where to go and when is it a day shoot, is it a night shoot, all those things. Folks love to talk about their photos. And some people are protective of, like if they find a nest and they don't want to get overcrowded and get swamped and birds to be disturbed, they might not tell you about it until it's over. But situations like this, when the birds are out and available to the general public, you can get some good information. All righty. Another thing to think about, and really important, especially if you're a birding photographer, is the weather. When I first started photography, my thought was, I want to have beautiful sunny days, and I go out in the middle of the day when it's beautiful. And now I realize that's the worst time, right? You know, the sun's bright, it's going to cause white spots, white plumage on the birds to burn out, and the dark places, the shadow areas will be really dark, and it's going to be tough to expose them. And so over the years, I've become more comfortable with looking for overcast. Bright overcast is the best for me because there's no hot spots, the shadows aren't black. Um, the light bounces from every direction, so you're not concerned about the light direction. So I'm looking for the weather all the time. The winds are very important. It's very significant if you're a bird photographer, because if you go, for instance, to Orlando Wetlands and you want to photograph the spoonbills that are flying around during springtime there on that little island that's next to the boardwalk, and you go on a day when the wind, so you'll want to go, in the afternoon because the sun will be shining over your shoulder onto the Rookery Island. The boardwalk runs north and south. The boardwalk, the Rookery Island's on the east side. So you want the sun on the west side shining across your shoulder onto the island, and you'll have perfect lighting. So that's something you could learn from talking to somebody. Is it a day shoot, a morning shoot, or an evening shoot? In the morning, you'd be staring into the sun, and everything would be silhouetted, and it's very difficult unless you get there real early. So it's generally an afternoon shoot. So you go there in the afternoon, and everything's perfect. You're all set, but the wind's blowing out of the east. So what does that mean? That means that all the birds will be landing facing away from you. They land into the wind, they take off into the wind, and they perch into the wind. Just like the airplanes take off at the airport and they take off uh, the runways into the wind, it gives the birds more lift, it gives the planes more lift. If you go there and the wind is out of the east, you'll be sadly disappointed because every time a bird lands, he's showing you his butt. And then he perches and he's not looking at you. When he takes off away from you. So you want to be aware of that, and then you want to just check the winds. So when I go out to Orlando Wetlands during the nesting season, first thing I do is check the winds. If they're out of the west, I change my schedule. Well, I don't know what I was going to do, but I know the wind's out of the west this afternoon. I'm going to Orlando Wetlands, and those spoonbills come flying in at you with their wings flared, and it just almost hover landing on the perches, and it's just amazing. So that's what you get, right? That's what happens when the wind is coming out of the west, and the birds are landing to you, and you know they're coming, and you're prepared, and it's not this hit or miss. I'll just go to Orlando Wetlands. I hear it's great there, but you go the right time of day. You go when the wind's in the right direction, when the light is right. All those things are powerful tools that really affect the quality of your photos, regardless of what you're photographing. Calm winds, right? If I want to go someplace, if I get up and I look at the weather or the day before and it says the winds are calm or there's no wind at all, then I'm thinking, well, that means the water is going to be flat and I can get reflection shots. So then I go to a location where I know birds will be in the water, or I think birds will be in the water. So this is Merritt Island. There's lots of wetlands there. There's lots of impoundments and open ponds. And if you get there early in the morning and the wind's calm like that, then it's mirror shots all day long. But if you just go there like tomorrow, we're not going to get any reflection shots because it's going to be 12 and 13 mile an hour wind. So, but it's going to be great for flight shots. All right. So some things to think about. And sometimes bad weather. In Florida, if you go out and it's storming, you're not going out because the lightning is going to kill you. But in Iceland, where I took this photo, they don't have thunderstorms, but they have lots of rain. So I went there in July when the puffins were breeding, and I went, and they told me it's going to rain every day, and it did. And I went prepared. I had waterproof pants, waterproof shirts, waterproof protection for my camera, a waterproof hat, waterproof shoes, and stood in the rain as the wind whipped off the ocean, hit the cliffs, and these birds just stepped off the cliff and just hovered into the rain. So it's again, if I had just gone to Iceland and had not considered any of that, hadn't been forewarned, I've never got a photo because I wouldn't have been able to get out of my car. But so it's good to plan ahead and be informed. Yeah, and bad weather. So foggy, rainy. makes for a mystical, beautiful photo, right? Don't hide from the well, if it's thunderstorms, hide. But if it's rainy, it's foggy, it's misty. I love the fog. And then there's seasons. So it's not just the time of day, but the time of year. And again, knowing this and being aware of this, right now is shorebird nesting season. So when I go to Fort DeSoto, excuse me, the day after tomorrow, I know least terns are out there nesting. I know that because I looked at the website every day for the past couple of weeks. I've been over there a couple times, but least terns are nesting, so I expect to get some pictures of least terns with the babies. I got pictures of Wilson's terns, not Wilson's plovers running around with their babies last week. Shorebirds nest from May to June. I want to say black-necked stilts, but I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about. The black skimmers are starting to nest, and so it's June to July for those guys, and they nest over on the west coast at Reddington Beach and India Shores. So get online, find those places. You during the May and June, it's great for shorebird nesting. And then there's some birds that migrate through. We have spring and fall migrations. A lot of birds don't live in Florida. You're never going to see this guy in Florida except for the 1 or 2 days when it's migrating north or migrating south during the migrations. And there's certain locations that are very well known for hosting the birds as they come down. This also happens to be Port DeSoto, which is on an island. And so the birds, it's one of the last stops they make before they head over the Gulf to South America. So birds flock there, and of course, bird photographers flock there. And you can find the exact dates, or you can get a good idea by the dates by just looking at the websites, the Facebook pages, and see what's starting to show up. But it's May and October. And then, nesting season for wading birds is mostly springtime, but the eagle starts in January, December, January. Great blue herons start January. In winter, they're the first birds. And then the spoonbills and the great egrets start. And then when they get done, it's the cattle egrets are starting to nest now. If you go to Orlando Wetlands, you can see cattle egrets flying back and forth across the street, picking up sticks and flying back to their nests. In fact, I was over there the other day. It was early in the morning. The sun's behind me. I got right, beautiful light. Cattle egrets are flying back and forth. I shot hundreds of photos of cattle egrets flying right in front of me in perfect light with sticks in their mouths, with breeding colors. So purple and orange colors. In fact, I shot so many, it was ridiculous. I just deleted, it was like crazy. But knowing the seasons, knowing the behavior of the birds makes for photos like that, right? You can get just wonderful photos of birds mating, flying sticks, building nests, raising their babies, all those things, And of course, a lot of folks from here, I'm sure, have been to the St. Augustine Alligator Farm where a lot of that stuff goes on. But Merritt Island's a good place. Orlando Wetlands is great.
Interested in this?
Further down the coastline, Wakotahachie Wetlands.
Interested in this? Oh, okay. There's some beautiful photographs.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I didn't want to show you any of my bad ones, so they're all deleted. Yeah, mating, nest building, all that good stuff, right? These are from Wakotahachie Wetlands, which if you haven't been down there, that's a pretty great place too. It's a man-made wetland, but it has a nice boardwalk through this area and lots of. This year, I got some great pictures of wood storks nesting there. Oops. All right, and anticipating behavior. So it's not just seasons or weather, but getting to know the wildlife. So what I've learned over many years now, and the way you learn this is like you go out there and you're out there and you see it. And this is an example of a time when I got a photo that I never could have gotten 10 years ago, but I got it because I was very sure exactly what was happening. Red-shouldered hawks don't fly around and hunt. They land, and they call it hawking. They just perch and they look around and they look this way and they look that way. And if you see a hawk on a perch, and he's just looking, he's always looking down and he's looking for some prey. And that's how they hunt. And then they'll dive off the perch and they'll get their prey. And then they might fly to a nearby perch to eat the prey. Or they might fly away with it, or sometimes they'll eat it in place. But usually they'll grab it and find a good perch. So knowing that, I spotted this red-shouldered hawk, and it was on one of the street signs, Orlando Wetlands. So I put myself, so the sun was behind me, the bright light was behind me, and I just waited for something to happen. Typically, what I expect to happen is he'll dive down, he'll grab something, fly away from me, and so you never know. But the good thing on this day was I had the right light angle, and the bird I saw him. He was doing just what I described. He dived down. I didn't know what he got. He stayed down for a minute, thrashing around on the reeds. He flew back up, but because there were dead palm trees behind me, they were the nearest available perches. He flew straight back at me with a snake in his mouth, right over my shoulder almost. And so, just a photo though that I got because I knew the bird well enough to anticipate what he was doing. And I have tons of stories of photos I didn't get because I had no clue what the bird was doing. In fact, one of the early stories of you guys have seen great blue herons, and they eat everything. And you've probably seen them enough to recognize that a lot of times they'll just be standing there, stock still, and you think, well, he's resting or posing, but it's actually hunting. They're watching the water, and you can get really great pictures of them just posing. But if you're patient and if you can just sit and realize he's hunting, then you'll get the picture of them stabbing at the prey, maybe coming up with prey in their mouth. If you're lucky, they'll stay there and eat it. But if you have no clue, if you think he's just resting, I'll take a couple of photos and going on my way. I had done that many times. The very first time that I recognized what was going on, I was at Sierra Wetlands many years ago. I hadn't been in Florida that long, so I didn't know the great blue heron's behavior. And there was a great blue heron. He's a beautiful bird, and I'm going, oh, this is so nice. He's in the water. I'm getting a good reflection, and I got a few photos. And then I thought, well, I just don't want to take 100 pictures of him standing there. So I was just kind of relaxed. And all of a sudden, he stabbed the water. He came up with the catfish in his mouth. He honked and flew away. And I was just like, my jaw dropped. I didn't have a clue. I missed the greatest photo I could have ever, had that day because I had no clue what was happening. So get to know your subject, spend the time out there, talk to your friends, read about the birds. If you know you're going out to see a particular species in a particular place, touch base with the folks that are there, look at their Facebook pages, ask them, got any tips for me? We all know about sandhill cranes. If you get down to Orlando Wetlands during the spring, there's in the past years, a couple of families of sandhill cranes that have had babies. These they call colts, and when the colts hatch, they just wander the wetlands. So recognizing that, you realize, well, it's nice to get down to eye level. So I go out there, I wear grubby clothes, I just follow them around. I try to anticipate which direction they're moving. I go lay on the ground and I wait for them to move into the right lighting angles, and I try to shoot at eye level. So this photo was a photo that was created like that, knowing that they're going to be wandering around, knowing that the babies are following their parents, that the parents are going to stop to feed them, and when they do, they're going to run to the parent. So I really focus on where the parent is, knowing that the babies will run to them. And so that's how this photo was created. Again, just you can go out there and walk around and you follow them. I see a lot of people doing it, and they're just shooting down at them. And they're just getting snapshots, right? Really not nice photos. But if you realize, well, get down at eye level, you know the parent's going to reach down to feed the baby, and then you can get a better photo. And lots of behavior shots. Here's the great blue heron after I had learned what he was actually doing. And I've got great blue herons with snakes in their mouths and turtles and fish and all kinds of stuff, right? Because I'm aware of it. In fact, it wasn't that long ago. I spent 20 minutes and I watched a great blue heron, and he was on something in the reeds. And he crouched and he got closer and closer and closer. And I waited, and after 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and I think, man, he's getting a rat or something really cool. And then he stabbed and he didn't get anything and he flew away. So, it doesn't always work. But when it does work, you're happy that you had the patience and you knew what was happening. And spoonbills. So this is a spoonbill story. This is Orlando Wetlands. That's the access that you have to spoonbills there. And this is actually I don't know what polite way to put it, but this is a mate rescuing his female mate from the unwanted advances of another spoonbill. I've watched the pair nest building, and the female was staying on the nest, and then the male would fly, get a stick every once in a while. He'd fly back, and they would have a little dance, and everybody would be happy. And then he'd go fly away to get another stick. Well, apparently another spoonbill had noticed this too. And he decided, well, the Papa's way, I'm going to try to take advantage. So he came down there and tried to mate with the female, and Papa showed up and just mugged him, just grabbed him by the bill and shook his head and beat him up and chased him off. Fun behavior that I got. I didn't anticipate that behavior. I anticipated dancing and greeting and maybe some mating, but I didn't anticipate the assault by spoonbills. All right, so you get the idea. Planning ahead can give you some good opportunities for photo ops you might not got otherwise. Another thing that's really important is to know how to use your camera, and it seems complex when you look at the electronic cameras and the thousands of buttons and the big menus and all that stuff. But you just got to remember that in the end, the camera's just a box with a hole in it, and all you're doing is push a button to open the hole, and that's all you're doing, and you're letting the light in. And the light's going to hit used to hit the film, now it hits a sensor, and then you just have to decide how long to keep the hole open and how wide open the hole has to be because to control the exposure. And that's really it. That's it in a nutshell. But let me just touch base on each of these ideas to sort of give you an idea how you can then not worry about settings when you're going out there or when things are happening, but realize, well, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm looking for today. Here's what the time of day is. Here's what the light's going to be. Here's the light angle. You can make most of your settings so that when the action happens, all you do is push a button and shoot. So let's look at some of this. Exposure. On every camera, there's in the viewfinder, there's a little, can you see my cursor at all?
Uh-huh.
Okay, good.
Yep.
So there's this little meter at the bottom of the viewfinder. I've got mirrorless now. I hope most of you guys have made it this step to mirrorless. Because with mirrorless, you could care less about what the meter says. Because you're seeing a live view, actually exactly what the sensor is going to see. And when you make adjustments on the exposure, the image gets lighter or darker, and you see the image get lighter or darker. You just adjust it according to your preferences and not what the camera is saying should be right or wrong. Many times, a photo that I think is perfect, the camera's saying it's 2 stops underexposed or 2 stops overexposed because it doesn't know what my subject is. I'm just going to say go mirrorless if you can, but you can make decisions about. And most of us eventually will all go mirrorless because I think that's the way of the future. I think most folks have already done that. Many folks have anyway. But when you're trying to adjust exposure, that's all you're doing is you're either going to do it with the size of the opening, which is the aperture, or the shutter speed, which is how long the opening is actually open. And the camera does have a meter down here that tells you if it's too dark, it'll shift to the left, and if it's too bright, it'll shift to the right, and it'll tell you what the camera thinks is right. Problem with that is the camera is looking to make your picture gray. It's looking for the darkest spot in the frame and the lightest spot and averaging those up to come to 18% gray in the frame. If you have a really dark shadow and a really bright feathers like on the head of an osprey, it's going to not try to give you good exposure for the osprey or for the other spot. It's going to average the exposures and pick an exposure that's right in the middle of that. And that works great if you're looking at woods and everything is kind of greenish gray, same tones, and there's some pine trees and maybe there's a deer, and everything is the same exposure. But if you have a white egret in front of shadowy mangroves, you want to expose to the egret. You could care less if the mangroves are too dark, but your camera's going to see all that dark mangrove and go, oh, I need to lighten this up because it should be gray. And as it lightens up the mangroves to make most of the photo gray, the egret's going to get lighter and lighter and lighter until it's just a glowing white blob, right? So you have to understand that's what your camera's doing, and the choices that it makes aren't necessarily good choices for your exposure for the image you're trying to create. The opposite is when you're photographing a bird in flight. If you ever take a picture of a bird in flight and you're using the exposure your camera selects, it's probably been a black dot because the camera sees all that bright sky and tries to make it darker down, bring it down to gray, which means the bird, whatever color it is, turns into a black dot. So you have to understand that's what's happening and then make decisions based upon what you think is the right exposure and not so much your camera. One of the ways you can adjust the lightness or brightness of your viewfinder is by changing the ISO. And ISO stands for International Organization of Standardization. It doesn't mean a thing, really, but you just know that when you change the ISO, the viewfinder gets brighter or darker. But it's not a good idea to use that as a tool because then you're adding another step to your exposure challenges. And you're always thinking, oh, it's kind of dark. Should I change the ISO? Should I change this or change that? The best thing to do with ISO, my recommendation, is not to leave an auto ISO and let the camera choose because it's always going to, you don't know if it's going to make the right decision. But set an ISO for the conditions that you know are going to be happening at the time. When I go out early in the morning and I know it's going to be kind of dim, in fact, I go out when it's dark and I try to get beautiful orange sunrises and that kind of stuff. And then as the light comes up, then I'm shooting the birds. But so I set the ISO higher because I know there's less light. And then you just have to decide how high. And that'll be everybody's personal preference. When you change the ISO, it changes the resolution of the image, and the higher the ISO, the less defined the resolution is. The more digital noise, it reduces the resolution. The image is sort of getting degraded. The lower the ISO, the sharper. So if you're at 100 ISO, brilliant, beautiful, perfect resolution, but you can hardly shoot because it's not letting in much light. The image can be kind of dark, which is great on a bright day. If it's really, really dark and you say, well, I'll just set the ISO really high, like the 6,000 or 8,000 or 12,000, it'll make the image lighter, but the image will get really, really digital and noisy. The resolution drops. So you have to figure out what the ISO range for your camera is, what makes you happy. In the mornings, I try not to go over 2,000 ISO. Usually it's more like 1250. And then as the light gets brighter, and if I'm, say, out of Orlando Wetlands, and I notice that my shutter speed is getting really, really fast now because I've got the ISO set sort of high. Then I realize it's bright, and I can reduce the ISO to get a more cleaner image, less digital noise. And I'll go down to 640 or somewhere in that range. So my range for my camera and my personal preference now is about 1600 probably to about 600, 640. A lot of cameras produce beautiful images at higher ISOs. You just have to figure that out for yourself. So don't change it all day long. In the morning, set it as your highest ISO, and then later on, as the light gets better or increases or whatever what is happening, adjust it accordingly. But don't change the ISO for each photo as if you were using it as an exposure tool. That's going to be confusing and difficult. What you really should just be doing is the f-stop, the aperture, and the shutter speed. So the f-stop, you've heard that term before. It's just a term to describe the fact that you're making the opening larger or smaller. And it's a number that's kind of confusing. Most lenses have a maximum, well, they all do. They all have a maximum and minimum f-stop. If you look at the end of your lens, you'll see where it says, if you have a zoom lens, it might say f5.63 to f22. And that's the total f-stop range, f6.3 being the largest opening, and f22 being the smallest opening. So I've got a diagram here. I hope you can see this. And it explains to you that those actually are numbers that mean something. It's actually when you say f-stop f2, that actually means the opening is 1/2 the total focal length of the lens. So I wrote, you can see the text there. F2 for a 400 millimeter lens is 200 millimeters. It's huge. It's a giant opening, which means you have to have a huge piece of glass, which means it's going to be really, really heavy and going to be very expensive. And so that's why most of our lenses aren't f2 lenses. They're more like f5.6 or f6.3 if you have a telephoto lens. But that's actually what's happening. So when you go to f22, the number seems higher, but it's not higher. It's actually a fraction, so it's very much smaller. If you're at f22, it's 1/22 the focal length. So if you have a 100 millimeter lens, that would be like, what, 5 millimeters? You have a microscopic opening. And so the question is, well, why would I ever do that? Why don't I just leave it wide open and leave plenty of light all the time? Because the f-stop not only changes the amount of light that comes in, you get a lot of light at a wide open f-stop and very little at a stop-down f-stop, but it also controls the depth of field, the area that's actually in focus, and when you measure from the distance from the camera. So I'm going to show you a diagram, picture to show you what I mean. Right there. If you're at f2.8, this guy's taking a picture of this young lady, and the depth of field is from 2 foot in front of her to 6 foot behind her. So the tree's out of focus, the puppy dog's out of focus. And you might think, well, No, I want to get the puppy dog in focus. I want the tree in focus. How do I do it? You stop down. You go to a very much smaller f-stop, and the depth of field increases dramatically. And uh, and then you can have the puppy dog in focus and the tree. Or he might go for f8 and just get the puppy dog and the girl, not just the tree. Those are artistic decisions you can make. If you have a really nasty background, it's really cluttered, you might want to go to a very shallow depth of field, go to a wide open. But if you love the background and you want it in focus, you'll go to a smaller f-stop. So what happens? Well, then if you go to a smaller f-stop, the picture gets dimmer. So how do you adjust? Then you use a different shutter speed, right? So that's the other tool for adjusting exposure. I typically really, when I'm photographing birds, I'm not really close to them. And the further away you are, the greater the depth of field is. So if I'm 50 foot from a bird and the background is 52 feet away, they're both going to be in focus. It doesn't matter what I do. The depth of field expands. But when you get really close, like the picture I showed you of the little sandhill crane earlier, the closer you are, the shallower the depth of field gets. So that's when you need to stop down. You need to realize, oh, I need to have that entire bird in focus. So I need to stop down to a smaller f-stop. Anybody have any questions about that? Feel free to, I don't hear anybody there, so I feel like I'm just talking to my computer. So if you got any questions or comments, please jump right in. But so that's what I'm doing. When I go out in the morning, I go out and I say, well, it's early in the morning. I'm going to set my ISO to 1600 because I know there's not going to be much light. And I know the birds are going to be a long distance away, so I'm going to have enough depth of field automatically. So I just set my lens all the way open again because I don't have much light. So that might be 5.6, and that's as wide open as the 200 to 600 lens I use a lot will go. So I don't have to make any more decisions except for the shutter speed. So I've already set the ISO, I've already set the f-stop. Now, how do I decide about the shutter speed? Well, the shutter speed, let me show you this picture of depth of field, by the way, just to show you an actual photo. The picture in the foreground is not at least turn, a royal tern. The birds we're going to see tomorrow. The bird in the middle that's in focus is a young great blue heron, and the birds behind are some more terns. So you see the depth of field starts about a foot in front of the great blue heron and stops about a foot behind him. So I'm probably at f6.3 or something like that. If I wanted all those other birds in focus, I would have to stop down, and by that I mean go to a smaller f-stop. So I could have gone to f22, let's say, or f32, depending on how your lens is designed. And all those birds would have magically become in focus. But the picture would have got really dark. So then I have to go to a slower shutter speed. So the good thing about mirrorless is you see all those adjustments in your viewfinder. You don't have to look at the meter and go and take a picture and then look at the picture on the back of your camera. You just see it happening in the viewfinder as you're taking a picture, which again, you'll hear me talk about that all the time if we're out tomorrow or if you come with us or anytime we were talking about photography. But that's the depth of field. That's controlled by the f-stop. So then shutter speed, what's shutter speed for? Hey, stop action, right? At least turn, diving down toward the water he's just flying like crazy fast. There's no way you're going to get that photo unless you're shooting at a super high shutter speed. I think I probably was at 1/8,000th per second, which means I was not at f16, right? I couldn't be because I couldn't have not had any chance to have enough light. So if you need to stop action, you go to a fast shutter speed, which means you have to open up the f-stop to compensate. This is in a situation where there was plenty of light, so it was not a problem. Sometimes you can't do that. There just isn't enough light, and you just hope if you're out early in the morning that you can set a shutter speed that's fast enough to stop some of the action. But when the conditions are right, you make those decisions, and you're able to get photos like that. Stop another one like that one. So that's a juvenile yellow-crowned night heron, and he's hunting for fiddler crabs. And what they do is they grab them and they throw them up in the air and they smash them around and they break the legs off and eat them piece by piece. So I know that's going to happen. So I know I need a faster shutter speed. The background is closer than I would like, but my main thing was I needed to have fast enough shutter speed to stop the action. And you see it's totally still. There's no blur at all. So this is probably 4,000 or higher. And I had plenty of light, so I was able to do that, use a higher shutter speed to stop the action. If it had been really, really early in the morning, I might have got him with the crab in his mouth. But as soon as he started flipping around, it would have been blurry, and there's nothing I could have done about it. even wide open. So sometimes the situation is that you can't get the photo you want, but if you go out the time of day you want, you go out when the light is favorable to the action you're trying to get, then generally you can, those choices are available. Sometimes you don't have light, so then you use slow shutter speeds and you play around and try to be artsy, right? This was spoonbills, and they were roosting in a lagoon in front of dark mangroves. And I knew they were there, and I went there because I knew that as the sun came up, it started to light up the lagoon, and I could get some photos. The problem is the birds started flying around and taking off before this lagoon really got lit up. So my alternative then was to just try to do some abstract or so-called artistic photos, right? So it's 1/25th of a second. And mostly when you try this, you get lots and lots and lots of deletes, right? But every once in a while you get one you think, oh, that kind of looks cool. It looks shows the action or the flow of the bird, and they become keepers. Most time with slow shutter speed, it's like people put their camera on a tripod and they're taking a picture of a waterfall or something like that, right? But you can handhold and try for some other interesting photo opportunities as well. All right, manual exposure. So I've been talking about is you controlling the decisions. If you leave your camera in automatic mode, aperture priority, shutter priority, then you control the shutter speed and shutter priority, but the camera and chooses the f-stop. So you're not controlling exposure. If you put it in aperture priority, then you can control the shutter speed, and again, you're not controlling exposure. If I would have taken this photo in automatic mode, then it's exactly what I was describing. The background would have been gray. The camera would have lightened up the background because the picture's way too dark according to the camera. And all the white spots, the light plumage on this little blue heron would have been burned out. But because I'm in manual, I'm controlling, I've already figured out my f-stop. I mean, I already figured out my ISO. I've already figured out my shutter speed and my f-stop. And then I realized I can see the changes as I'm photographing the bird, and as he moves to light to dark, I can just roll my thumb on the shutter speed and make the image darker or lighter, and then you can get photos that are properly exposed, uh, photos that your camera could not get. That's why people shoot manual exposure, to make decisions that are based upon their artistic choices and not just hoping for the best and hoping the camera that everything lines up to work out well for the camera. When I first started bird photography, I was shooting aperture mode a lot because the guy had said, well, if you use aperture priority, you can control the depth of field and you get nice out of focus backgrounds. So I was doing a lot of that. But then when there's a challenge condition, when a bird flew from light to dark, for instance, the camera would change the shutter speed and everything that looked good in one situation would be blurred in the other situation. And I was baffled about what to do about it. Until I figured out exactly what the camera was doing. Go to manual, and then you can make all those decisions. And shooting raw, a lot of folks think raw is a format that you can set your camera to that gives you ability to capture every bit of exposure detail and every color detail and everything that the camera is capable of capturing, all the information. You can capture it. It makes for a larger file, but then when you do post-processing, if you have had difficult situations where you didn't quite get the exposure of the situation you wanted, you can recover it because it gives you enormous exposure latitude, like 7 stops of exposure latitude. So you can rescue photos. If they're in JPEG, a JPEG is a condensed file already. When you take it, it's already been compressed. It doesn't have nearly as much information. It's smaller, but it doesn't give you that latitude. So at some point, if you're really serious about making great images and working in different conditions, shooting in RAW gives you that opportunity. So I have a couple examples. Here's a photo, and you see, what is it? It's a American bittern. It flew across the road. It was early in the morning, like I told you. I go out before dark, and I saw it. And I said, "That's an American bittern." And he landed over there, and I was like ISO 2000, I think, and I squatted down, and I got as sturdy as I could, and I was shooting at 600 millimeters, so I did not have enough shutter speed, but I shot at 1/30th of a second. And because, we have image stabilization of the body, image stabilization in the lens, I could get a sharp image at 30th of a second. If he had moved, it wouldn't have been, there's no chance. But it's still underexposed. But that's the best I could do without a tripod. But I'm shooting in RAW. So I take it back to the Photoshop and fix it. And that's what shooting in RAW does for you. And sometimes you can even use it as a tool. So, for instance, this photo, it's a barred owl, and it's in the woods, and he's on a branch in the shade, and the background is glowing green. So, if I would expose for the owl, then the background would have burned out. It would have got so bright, and it would have just been, terrible. Knowing that's the case, knowing that I really like the background, this color, underexposed for the bird, because I recognize when I take it back into the computer to post process, I can adjust exposure on the bird and get both. Oops, there you go. So now I have nice exposure on the owl, and I still have that beautiful background. So that's uh, a technique that you can take advantage of. You can recognize that I can actually make a photo that's not the photo I want, but fix it later because I have those tools. Okay, so that's something to think about. It requires a little more skill than I can describe in 10 seconds. But once you practice those things a bit, you can get better and better with it. Be prepared for action. So as you're going out there, you've got your ISO set as fast as you need it. You've got your f-stop set. Then you just need to make sure your shutter speed is fast enough to stop the action. If you're going out to shoot pictures of flowers at Orlando Wetlands, then you don't need a fast shutter speed, and you probably want a high f or a small f-stop to get plenty of depth of field. That'd be great when you get to the flowers, but what if a fox runs across the road or a bobcat and you're set up for the flowers because you were going to shoot flowers? Then you're not going to be able to do it. You're going to have blurry photos that just won't be the photos you wish you had. And I'm sure you've heard people say, this happened, but I didn't have time to change my settings, so I didn't get the photo I wanted. And my answer is, well, why didn't you have the settings set for the possible action? You don't have to set it for the flowers until you get there. So why don't you set it for the deer running across the street or the birds having a fight? Set your camera for the ISO, f-stop wide open for the fastest shutter speed you possibly can maintain with the lighting conditions. And then when the action happens, you don't have to set anything. I'm already set up for that action. I just push the button and click away, and I have enough shutter speed to stop the action. Then when I get to the flowers, I change the ISO. I'm not the ISO, but the f-stop and the shutter speed. Put my camera on a tripod or whatever I want to do, and I shoot pictures of flowers all day long. But as you're moving, be prepared. Expect the bird to fly across the road, or the deer, or the bobcat, or whatever it is, the shot, the 1 in a million shot. Be prepared. Be set up for that. And go when the light's best. I've talked about morning light or evening light. The morning or the evening, the light changes dramatically. In the early mornings, the sun's coming up and the sun's hitting the atmosphere at an angle, and it's gold and yellow. And as it gets higher and higher, it becomes white, right? And you've heard that golden moment. You can see the sort of warm golden look you get from early morning photos. So I'm always looking for moments when I can be out. So that means getting up at 3 o'clock and being out there when the sun rises and that stuff. And some people say, "Oh, I'm not a early morning person," and I'm like, "Well, you're never going to be a great photographer unless you can just convince yourself. You can go to bed at 8 o'clock and still get the same amount of sleep once you convince yourself it's worth it." And then here's the problem with going out when the light's great. You go out to the spoonbill nest at St. Augustine Alligator Farm, and it's a beautiful day, and the sky's blue, and the sun's bright, and it's leaving shadows all over the birds, and you can see the back of the spoonbill's back is burnt out, and the shadows are dark, and it's all mottled, and half it's bright, half of it's dark. When I go to the alligator farm at St. Augustine, I have to drive 2 hours. So I don't want photos like that. If it's going to be a beautiful day, I check the weather. Beautiful day, stay home. Oh, it says 30% chance of rain. Okay, I'm going. I'm going because 30% chance of rain means it's going to be cloudy all day, which means there's going to be no shadow, which means the light's going to be bouncing from every direction. Instead of this photo, I get that photo. And I'm going to flip back and forth. It just lets you compare. Sunny day, shadows, just went in the middle of the day. Overcast day, no shadows, no hot spots, If it's a white bird or a pink bird or any bird that has light plumage or any subject uh, that's very bright light and overcast. Bright overcast is my like perfect day. And so I'm happy about tomorrow. We're supposed to have overcast morning. No rain, but overcast morning. So all those white terns will be less challenging to photograph. And just so pointing out some different, this is evening light. Both of these birds were photographed as the sun's going down, and I'm starting to get a little backlighting behind them. So I just moved where the sun would be hitting the back of them, and there's kind of gold in the feathers. But you can't get these photos in the middle of the day, right? You're not going to get room lighting in the middle of the day. And here's a good example of two. This is Orlando Wetlands. These birds are taking these two photos. This photo and the next one we're taking. This is 509. It's still fairly bright out, and the whites are white, and the pinks are pink, and it's just like perfect colors. But just a few minutes later, what is this one? 532. See how those colors change, and the bird looks orange, and the feathers start looking gold. Just flip back and forth. See that bright compared to that? That's a color change that happens. And as the evening goes on, sometimes the birds just start to glow, turn orange and gold. It's just amazing. So just thinking about that can be have an impact, huge impact on your images. All right, and light angles. These are hey, these are royal terns. We're going to see them tomorrow, and they're doing what's fun. Royal terns, they're cool because they go out and the males will find a fish and they'll fly back in. And I don't know how he does it, but they screech while they're flying with a bird in their mouth. I mean, with a bird, fish in their mouth. And they're alert the females. I'm coming, watch this. And they land and they prance around and they want the female to take notice. And so that's a cool behavior that you can watch. But this is a terrible photo. This is the photo where the light angle is, you see the shadow is going to the left, which means the sun was way off to the right. Instead of having the sun behind me shining on the birds, I was walking off the beach. I'm really done, really. But I saw this bird flying in, and I thought, well, maybe I will be able to move to get a right light angle. But I was grabbing photos, and it didn't work out. He, he, she took the fish and ate it, and it was all over before I could ever get in a good angle. But I kept the photo just to illustrate that if the sun is to your left or to your right or in your face, it's not going to make a great photo. You can see the right side of the bird on the right is burned out. It's totally white, no detail. You can't even see the eye or any of the detail on the bird on the left. It's because the light angle is off to the right. If you ever go to a studio to get your portraits made at Olin Mills or whatever, the photographer's standing there and he has a bank of lights behind him and to the side, and they're shining on you. And the light on you is perfect and evenly illuminated. And that's what you want to do with the sun. You want the sun behind you, acting like your studio lights, and it's shining on the back of your neck and making your shadow point straight at the subject. And then the light's going to hit the birds, whatever your subject is, and it's going to be perfectly illuminated with no shadows. So just to point out that, here's the royal terns with a terrible light angle, and here's royal terns with a much better light angle. You can see their shadows are short, so the sun is kind of high, but there's not a shadow to be found on those birds at all anywhere. Right? And the whites aren't burned out; they're bright. There's plenty of detail still. And of course, I know that because I've got mirrorless, and I can just scroll it down until it looks just right. Right? If you were using DSLR, you can get the same photo. You just have to recognize that my meter is probably going to be a little misleading, and I want to stop down a little bit to preserve the detail. Then you have to look at the photo, and then you have to make adjustments. So that's all well and good. The problem is while you're doing all that, a lot of times the action changes, the birds fly away, whatever, which is why I like mirrorless, because a bird's flying at you, and you go, it's a little dark, and you can make exposure changes while you're taking the pictures as the bird's moving. But anyway, that's the lighting.
But Jack, you know what? I'll stop you for a second because there was a question back that
Okay,
you
good.
kind of addressed it. Back it says, "Are you ever using spot metering?" And I think what you're saying is,
If you have a white bird, so when I was using metering, I don't even look at the meter anymore. But spot metering would be like if I spot metered on this bird for the white spot right in the middle of the chest, then the meter would tell me to stop down to make that gray. And then I would have to go, oh, I know that. So I'm going to spot meter. I'm going to choose the exposure it says, and I'm going to add 2 stops to make it brighter. That was the kind of crazy stuff I have to do when I was using a DSLR and I was photographing white birds. If you spot and meter, it's gonna, like if you go out on a snowy day in Germany or a bright sunny day at on the Gulf Coast on those white sand beaches, and you take a picture of the beach or a picture of the snow is going to be gray, the beach is going to be gray because the camera's going to turn everything gray. And if you spot and meter, it's going to do the same thing. It's got nothing but white. It's going to turn 18% gray. It's going to be too dark. So then you have to realize I can't spot meter, but I'm automatically going to have to do a mental correction for the meter because the camera is going to give me exposure. It's going to be two stops too dark usually.
But you prefer to then trust what your mirrorless is telling you.
I don't have to trust it because it is exactly what I'm getting. The sensor, what I'm seeing in the viewfinder is exactly the image that's being seen on the sensor. So it's really great because literally you set your ISO, you don't have to mess with the ISO. You set your f-stop, you know what your depth of field is going to be. And then you just look, it's a little dark. I roll my shutter speed, make it a little slower shutter speed. And you don't even have to know it's going slower or faster. You just have to move the button with your thumb a little bit and make the picture lighter or darker. It's just wonderful. You can still look at see what the meter says, but like why? You know, you want the photos to suit your artistic eye. Sometimes you might want it a little dark or a little light, and you couldn't tell the meter. Well, you could do exposure compensation, which means you have to take a photo. Oh, it's too light, it's too dark. You have to push a button. You have to roll another button, change exposure, take another picture, then look at it, and then see if anybody's left for you to photograph. Right. So that's why manual's so good because with manual you're making adjustments on the fly and you're making adjustments that suit your eye. This is my idea of the kind of photos I like to get. I like to have the background out of focus so the subject sits, sort of floats in the camera. Uh, this is done two ways. One is by using a shallow depth of field, but also having a background that's a long ways away. If you go out tomorrow and shoot down at the birds, then you're going to get the top of the bird's head and you're going to get great detail in all the mud and silt and sand and whatever else that's all around. Or you can lie down and get low and shoot at eye level and you have a normal perspective for the bird and plus the background disappears because it's now, instead of 8 feet away, it's 100 feet away because you know, the horizon is where the horizon is. So that's the idea about not just light angle, but perspective, right? If you shoot down, well, if you're taking pictures of people, you wouldn't get on a chair and shoot down at the top of their heads, right? And you would shoot at eye level, and then you would have control of the background too. So that's what we like to do. Shorebirds is light angle, no shadows on this bird anywhere. You can see a little bit of the sun reflecting his eye, and that is the sun early in the morning, so the sun's not hot. The whites aren't burned out. You got enough light to light up the blacks. This, by the way, is a black-bellied plover in full breeding plumage. And you won't see many of those around now because they're already headed out to the Arctic in the next day or two. Eye level, so that's what I'm saying. So I took this photo about 20 years ago or so, I don't know. And I'm thinking, well, let me get a reflection shot. So this photo is terrible in many ways. The light's not great. You can see the light is on the right, so the left side's a little bit of shadow, and the right side of his butt is all burned out. But the biggest problem with this is that the reflection is no good, and I'm really photographing the bottom of the pond. So I'll show you a photo taken a little bit later in my career of the same bird in the same situation. So this, I'm standing up, shooting down at him. In this photo, I'm laying in the water. And yeah, isn't that amazing? That's the exact same species and really the same depth of water. And the only difference is here I'm shooting down at it.
Yeah.
And here, well, and of course the lights are better here too. But it's the background is, you don't even know where the background starts and ends because it's so far away. And the foreground's out of focus and my depth of field is like 4 or 5 inches. So the whole bird's in focus, but everything else is out. And that's the kind of photos you can get. And you don't have to be in the water. You can lay on, you know, sand. Some people take towels and lay on the sand. I just dress for the, you know, wet, muddy conditions and don't worry about it. And when I get done, I get cleaned up, right? Saying all that, saying to lay down in the sand is easy to say. And as you get a little older, it gets a little harder. And you get a little older, it gets a little harder. And there's a point where it's like Oh, it's easy to get down and do it. It's just you can't ever get back up. So yeah, you need to take a Sherpa with you to help you get up, or maybe just to get as low as you possibly can. Sometimes uh, shooting on a slope where the bird's a little higher can be helpful.
I'm looking to see if one of our folks is on here, Dave Bowers. He has rigged his tripod upside down.
Oh yeah,
And he holds it on his foot.
and it's good, and that's a little awkward, but
And you don't really get to see your
yeah, so that's a little difficult, but I just low crawl in the sand a lot for shorebirds, and not everybody can do that. I understand that, so it's a technique that really, and sometimes if the birds are high, well, there it is. There's a little tool. This is called a ground pod, and it's kind of shaped like a frying pan, and the tripod head is sitting in the ground pod, and you just slide it along. So that's a nice tool. I don't use one of those anymore. I just hold the camera myself and on my elbows, and I'll show you that tomorrow. For the folks that are going tomorrow, I'll demonstrate a lot of this stuff before we even get started. Sometimes the birds are high, and you still want to shoot at eye level. You want to be below a nest shooting up at a bird, and he's looking down, and it's very awkward. If you possibly can, get to eye level. This bird was in a yard in St. Cloud, and it had been there for years. This great horned owl family had raised chicks in a nest in a guy's yard. It came up. It became very well known. Photographers went from all over the place. I found out about it. I drove down there. I realized that I'm shooting up at it, and I would be happier if I wasn't. I realized that there's cars everywhere. This is in the front yard. Like, there's no way I can disturb this bird really. So next time I came, I put a ladder on top of my truck. And when I came back, I just got the ladder up. I was still the same distance away, except instead of being on the ground shooting up at it, I would just put my ladder up and I climbed to the top of my ladder. And then I looked around, feeling very proud of myself and looking at all the other photographers were going, I wish I had a ladder, you know. But anyway, so he's got a crow.
ladder on the ground, not ladder in the truck.
Yeah, right. Ladder. I had a ladder on top of my SUV. I took it out, set it up. I climbed up it next to my SUV. So I wasn't any closer to the bird, but I just had the better angle. So there's things you can do. Sometimes you get lucky and the bird puts itself in a place where you can get an eye level shot. I'm sure you've seen lots of pictures of osprey where the people are shooting up at them. They're on top of a pole or somewhere. This was on top of a pole too. This was in a nest box. It was put in Winter Park in the center of the town. It's right on the main road. But the good thing is that there's a few trees in the background, and across the street from the nest was a parking garage. So I drove up to the fourth level of the parking garage, and I'm shooting eye level at an osprey nest that's about 30 foot away across the street. And I could have had buildings in the background, but I moved where I got the trees in the background, right? And so sometimes, you just take advantage of the situation and you get lucky. It's difficult to get this kind of shot of an osprey nest anywhere else that I know.
That's awesome.
Background. So, this is an okay photo of spoonbill. This is Orlando Wetlands, and there's a million spoonbills flying around. And the picture is okay exposure. And he was on the perch, and I waited for him to launch. But, I got this tree back here and all these branches and all this clutter. And so, I deleted it. Except I didn't delete it. I kept it as an example of a photo that I don't love. But at Orlando Wetlands, there's times when they fly in front of the sky. They fly, you just find a nice background. And you put yourself so that the bird flies in front of the background you want. So this is also at Orlando Wetlands, and you can see the difference, right? Uh, Cluttered, almost lost in the clutter, and here he's flying in. And I knew I had watched these birds fly to this particular place to get in the water and preen. So I knew I could position myself so the light would be good, and they would be flaring their wings into the wind. And so this was not an accident at all. I was exactly the right place, and I just had the patience to be in the right spot where it flew in the afternoon with the wind out of the west. And he flew right toward me and landed in the water in front of me. And I knew he was going to do that because I'd seen him do it over and over and over and over. And I got lots of photos similar to this in that same situation. So it's behavior and it's thinking about the whole image as opposed to just a picture of a bird or whatever your subject might be. Background is such a big difference. A photo I took a long time ago, and I went out on a calm day, and it's a mirror reflection, and it could be okay photo, but to me, it's just cluttered. And if you were taking a picture for a guidebook and you wanted the habitat, this would be pretty good, I guess. But again, another example of the same bird with a clean background. And to me, that's like head and shoulders. I mean, nothing wrong with that photo, but it's just, cluttered, too busy for me. And here I did the same thing. I'm laying in the water. The background is a million miles away, and
And you got him a little fish.
yeah. So that's what I'm watching. He's got a little thing
A lot of people are very happy about that.
there. Yeah. So that's the deal. So this is when I go out. I wear I have a little wallet, like a travel wallet that hangs on a strap around my neck. I throw it over my shoulder, put it down the back of my shirt. I have nothing in my pockets. I'm wearing nylon shorts usually and a shirt that I don't care if it gets muddy. And I just lay down in the mud or lay down in the water and don't worry about it because I know how to take a shower. So it's not a problem. When I get done, I just get cleaned up, right? And so if I'm going to go somewhere where I have to get in my car before I can get home, I take a towel or I sit on the towel. But at Fort DeSoto, a lot of places they have showers and bathrooms and change. So anyway, the difference between those two, I think, is choose your background, and it makes a big difference. And then sometimes just move in close, right? Here's a photo of a bird sitting on a culvert, and you see millions of anhingas drying their wings. This guy's in breeding plumage, so he's really pretty. But I don't want to picture a bird sitting on a culvert, so and really the prettiest features are those beautiful plumage and those eye colors. So I just got in tight and cropped and left the culvert completely out of the picture. Same thing here. This is a spoonbill, and when a lot of birds, when they preen, will get very happy with themselves and very comfortable and will allow you to get closer approaches than you might otherwise get. Of course, I'm using a long lens, and this is cropped a bit too, but I've got lots of good pictures of spoonbills preening, but you can see the impact it gets when you get really tight. Same thing, sandhill cranes, another bird that's very comfortable around people. And this was actually, I had followed these guys around and I had been photographing the babies. And then they stopped and it was time to preen. So this is almost a full frame photo. And so what you just need to think about is the depth of field. When you get very close, then the depth of field is going to get shallower. So to get everything in focus, you have to stop down to maybe F11 or F16 or even F22, which would make the image darker. So then you have to use a slower shutter speed. But I love to get in tight and get the detail and the colors of these birds. And I love the little heart they have on the head anyway. And then everybody wants to do that, right? At Orlando Wetlands, you can get as close to any gators as you want. And so it's fun to get up close and get a good picture of that eye. And I took this photo and I didn't notice he had a little snail on
I
it.
was just saying
That's
that.
a snail, yeah. All righty. So the last thing I want to mention is tripods. So I don't use a tripod that much anymore. I used to almost religiously use a tripod, but now we have really cameras that we use really good high ISOs and still make clean pictures. And all the lenses have image stabilization, and the bodies have image stabilization. So I'm much more apt to handhold now. But there are times when you can't get a photo you want without a tripod. If it's really, really, really dark, you can take pictures that you could not take without a tripod. If you want to take a time exposure, if you want to sit at a subject like a bird, an owl on a perch, and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting and you're waiting for them to fly, and you're hand holding, you just give up and you're wobbling. But if you have it on your camera on a tripod, you just wait and you're just relaxed. And when he flies, you just push the shutter and click, 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 and you get the launch. So let me show you some photos. This is a photo could not be taken without a tripod. It was taken before the sun came up. It was taken at Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. I got there early. The sky's just starting to light up. You can't even see the sun. It's just sky's turned pink. The young spoonbill was out in the middle of a pond roosting. Spent the night there because he knew he could because the water surrounded him. Nothing could approach him without disturbing the water. And a lot of birds will do this. I have pictures of wood storks, lots of other birds doing this. But I got there and I know I can't handhold this photo, but I have my tripod and I anticipated it. So I put my camera on the tripod. I shot it, I think, at 1/15th of a second, which is impossible to do with a handheld. In fact, I can't even push the shutter on the top of my camera when it's at 1/15th without shaking the camera a little bit. So
1/15th of a second for a bird.
yeah, so it's on a tripod, and so I set my camera for timer release for 2 seconds, and I clicked the shutter and I backed off and didn't touch it, and then it took the picture. So what does that mean? You mean you hope the bird doesn't move, right?
Yeah.
And I took several photos, and of course, it did move. A lot of times, it moved just a little bit, enough to blur the photo. But
Look at that.
that photo was taken, yeah, before the sun was up. The sky's pink, which made the water pink. The water's mirror flat because there's no wind because the sun's not up yet. Couldn't take them without a tripod. And then of course there's that photo, which I took right around the corner here the other day, but or maybe that was nice, and I guess that was nice. But yeah, you see a lot of photos of running water, rivers. It's really easy. You find an overcast day, you expose for the water so it doesn't burn out. Put your camera on a tripod, and you can get lots of interesting.
Oh, Jack, I got another question. What camera do you use?
So I use a Sony A7 IV. It's mirrorless. Um,
Okay.
It's yeah, Sony's great because, and in fact, they're renowned for the tracking and focusing.
Yeah.
It's got the bird's eye tracking. It'll track a bird's eye when it's flying.
And what lens?
And I have two lenses I use a lot. I have a 200 to 600 zoom. Years ago, it was hard to get a zoom lens that was sharp enough to make this happen. But when Sony came out with 200, 600, I had heard good things about it. And I shoot at 600 a lot, and it's great. And then they came out with a 400 to 800, which I'll use tomorrow, which is slow. The maximum f-stop is f8, so I can't use it in the dark, right? But it's super sharp even at 800. So I use those zooms because the zooms are very, very flexible in terms of you don't have to keep backing up or moving forward. Your subject moves is flying to you. You can zoom it and keep it in the frame as you're photographing the subject. So yeah,
And a lot of people are volunteering to be a Sherpa for you.
yeah, I love to have anybody join me anytime. In fact, and I'm gonna, I guess, throw a business pitch here. I do custom one-on-one or small group workshops all the time, where I meet somebody. I'll say, "What would you like to photograph?" Spoonbills, nesting, shorebirds. Okay, let's meet. We'll get together somewhere about 2 hours early. We'll talk about all these field techniques, about settings, about how to approach the subjects, and then we go out and do it. We go out and put it into play.
And if they wanted to reach out to you about that, what do they do? Facebook or how do you want to?
Yeah, you probably have my information, but I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. My Instagram is Paleo Jack 2, PALEOJACK 2. I'm on Facebook as Jack Rogers. Right now, I think my profile picture is I think it's an owl. I think it's a great horned owl. But or Nancy Flynn or Liz or folks you can get in touch with me. Yeah, but just holler at me and say, hey, maybe we could do a half day or a 1 day workshop.
Yeah.
The one I'm going to do at Fort DeSoto Wednesday, I'm going to meet the lady at my hotel at 3. We're going to do a 2 hour classroom session. Then we're going to go out to the beach and shoot till sunset. Then the next morning get up and do sunrise.
Wow.
So we'll do that. So it'll be so that's a good.
Okay.
Tripod, another tripod photo. So that's what I'm saying. You're watching the nest, the birds are sleeping. You're sitting there, oh, I can't hold this camera, wait for the perfect moment. So two things here is again, no shadows, right? Because I'm there on the good day. And then I've taken a lot of photos here. I click, but I didn't have to hold my camera for a half hour. I just had my camera on tripod. I had it framed, everything, and when the action started, I got this shot. All right, that's the stuff I wanted to say.
Cindy, can you unmute everybody if they want to, or I guess do we want
And
everybody?
there's some of my information. There's my
Oh yeah, there's some
Instagram,
information.
there's my
Everybody,
Facebook.
anybody that might want to
there's my phone number. They can
hire
text
Jack, there you go. That's a scoop.
me.
And I think I have one. Oh, the host would like you to unmute. I'm unmuted. Oh, I don't even. I'm going to cause problems. I really mute myself.
Very clearly, this fund is.
So anyway, tomorrow when we go out, what I want to do with everybody is when we hit the beach, yeah, spend about 15 or 20 minutes sort of talking about the settings, talk about the ISO, the shutter speed, the f-stops, the light angle, point or shadow, getting down low. I'll demonstrate how I get down and how I can still get up, and how to do that without getting your hand in the sand too, which is important because you don't want to get sand on your hands because then you can't use your camera. So I can get down and get back up without getting my hands at all in the sand. Another thing I do is, I dress appropriately to be able to do that. And then the last thing I'll say is I have a paintbrush it's a fine bristle paintbrush. So if I get any sand on me anywhere, if it blows on my camera, whatever, I can just clean all the sand off when I do it. Anyway, there you go. I hope everybody got
a teaser for those who are not going tomorrow. So, you're getting up and you're on a towel? How do
Now,
you know?
don't do the towel, because like I said, I don't worry about my clothes at all. But I just, I find where the birds are at. I put myself in the right light angle, and then I slowly approach them. And as they look like they're starting to notice me, I'll get down because I don't want. You can't walk up to shorebirds because they see you coming from high up, and they get predated from high up. So if you walk up, like you're 6 foot tall or whatever, and you walk up to them, they're going to flush. But if you're down low, you can creep up to them, and they just look. Well, this is not a danger, right? So I walk up to the point where they're starting to notice me. I'll get down on my hands and knees, and then I'll just and then I just go down on my elbows. I'm holding the camera, and when I get back up, I just sort of crouch my body back up and just sort of unwind. But I don't ever put my elbows get sandy, right? But and my whole body gets sandy. I don't worry about that with my camera thing.
Oh,
Yeah,
man.
and
Okay.
like I say, I'll share it tomorrow. But
Somebody get a picture of him tomorrow doing that
yeah,
wiggle on
yeah,
on the
take a
beach.
little video.
That's your
Sure,
job, Susan.
do that. All righty.
I,
Well, hopefully that was
I have a
useful.
quick
Go
question.
ahead. Yes.
Hi. And I'm fairly new to photography, but I'm an avid lifelong birder. And
Mm.
I'm not sure how to ask this politically correct. So I'll just say, is it assumed that ethics will be followed when you're around nesting birds?
No, there's no assumptions about it. The everywhere you go, there are nesting birds, and they're when the sites are identified, they rope them off.
Well,
So
I
then,
understand that, but I've been a
okay.
bird steward at Huguenot Park, and you
Uh,
can walk right up to the birds,
oh
and
yeah.
you can
Mhm,
separate the parents
mhm.
from the babies.
Yes.
So that's
Right.
why I'm asking about the assumption that
Yeah.
birds won't be disturbed.
And I wasn't done yet, but I will say that's typically what they're hoping for. And they're usually, like you said, there's stewards out there that will remind you. And there's a code of ethics that all the websites will say photographers, nesting birds, code of ethics. Sometimes they go to the extreme to the point where the photographers uh, you know can't take them serious. Because I literally read one yesterday that said stay outside the roped areas. Don't get your body or camera or anything inside the roped areas. And if there's not a rope, then stay at a good distance away so the birds aren't disturbed. For instance, you should be 300 foot away.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like at 300 foot away, you're not even going to see a bird. You don't even have a clue, So that
Well,
gets a little over the far end. But let me finish. Let me finish. I'm 100% with you. Uh, like I said, when I'm approaching birds, if they start to notice me, then I go down and I get to the point where I'm not disturbing them, and then they recognize I'm not disturbing them, and and they go about their business. And if I crawl a few feet closer, and they don't leave, they don't get perturbed. But I know some birds, they'll definitely like the least turns, they'll immediately notify you when you are too close. They'll come peck your heads, right? So, but
right.
we're gonna see the roll turns, and tomorrow, if the babies are out there, they're gonna be running all over the beach, and
Yeah,
and
and
and they're not inside nest and roped off areas, and so then you have to be cognizant. You don't want to separate them from their parents or whatever. But many of those birds that I'm photographing are in areas where they're quite used to seeing people as well, right? So it comes to some experience, and the folks that don't have the experience then need to lean on the folks that do have experience, and then of course that's why you're out there too, to make sure folks as a steward, that don't understand any of this and realize how much impact they can have, become aware of that stuff. So yeah, I
well
mean,
stated. Well stated. Thank you. I appreciate that
yeah,
very much.
sure.
And then, Patrick, we have no, well, we have a
Mhm.
question in the chat about, do you ever, or what's your opinion of flash? Like,
Oh, um, when I first started photographing birds, they had this thing called a better beamer
yeah,
that would extend
yeah.
your flash so you could do flash flights. But really, again, with the cameras that operate at high ISOs with image stabilization, I haven't. I still have a flash. It's gathering dust in the closet somewhere. I go out. Uh, I attempt to go out by doing the prior planning on days when the light is where I want it. Some days it doesn't work out. And some days you go, oh, it's just too dark, it's too dark, and it's crummy, and I'm not going to get any flat shots, and it doesn't work out. But if you plan ahead, generally you can have the light in the right angle, the right direction. You can have the right gear. You can mostly don't need to use a flash. I don't use a flash at all.
Very good. Okay. All right, last chance for questions, everybody. Okay, well, you're getting a lot of good comments. They like it.
Good, good,
Absolutely fantastic.
good,
And
good.
and someone's already named your elbow, the combat crawls. It's
Oh,
from
yeah?
your Army.
Well, I
experience.
mean, yeah, I mean, I was in the Army for 21 years, so I did some crawling.
That must
Yeah.
be it.
Okay,
right.
well, I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and the folks that are out there, just yeah, wear your grubby clothes and practice laying in the mud with me.
There you go.
Thank you, Jack. I really enjoyed it. That was
All right.
wonderful.
Good, thank you so much. Thank you, sir.
There you go. All right, everyone. I'm gonna let they're just the comments are flying in, Jack. So
Sure.
we're just gonna say you can end your thingy.
Yeah, I'm
there.
gonna do that.
Okay, thank you. Great presentation. Lots of happy people. All right.
Good.
Well, thank you all. And here I'm going to end the call. See you in July. Our meeting is in July. Don't miss it. First Tuesday of July. Bye.
That's it, guys. Thanks. Bye.